I think looking for opportunities, because what we've seen over the past couple of hours is that there's probably been a bit of short covering within the markets because the markets ran up quite a bit and then retracted a bit. So we suspect that potentially there's been a bit of short covering because markets have been weak for the past few days now. But with that said, I think looking for opportunities is definitely a definitely opportunity in this type of market environment, because if we do see markets correct by 5 or 10%, given the news and sort of given what we had seen previously with SARS and sort of the quick turnaround that we saw in markets, we could potentially see something very similar. So it is looking for opportunities, and it is looking for those stocks that have been heavily sold off as a result of this unfortunate news right now.
The other interesting thing that we saw overnight was risk fading in the United States, risk also fading across some markets in Asia. Do you think this is perhaps the start of a more meaningful pullback across those indices, or just some short-term profit taking?
There's definitely some short-term profit taking. I think in particular when you look at the U.S. and when we look at sort of valuations, U.S. equity markets are, I won't say overvalued, but it is very much at its peak when you look at from a historical standpoint. So when you look at from that perspective and looking at the fact that potentially we do start to see a bit of a U.S. dollar weakness in 2020, that should bode well for Asian markets, because when you look at it, Asian equity markets right now are trading roughly only about 12.5 times forward earnings. Compare that with the U.S., where they're trading roughly around 16.5 times forward earnings. And when you look at sort of earnings growth expectations for the U.S. is roughly about 9.5% for 2020, while you look at Asian equity markets in particular, they're roughly around 12 to 13% on a year-on-year basis for earnings growth. So there is definitely a lot of opportunities within Asian stock markets, I would say, for 2020.